The power goes out at 11 p.m. You walk to the garage, connect your $500 solar kit, hear the fridge compressor kick on, and assume the advertised watts are doing their job. That assumption is where the money disappears. Here is the actual test. Can that battery sustain the fridge through 8 hours of darkness? And can the solar panel refill it before the next night? Most budget kits fail both. Not because one part is bad, but because 5 separate failure points compound silently until the compressor quits and the food spoils anyway. Those 5 points are battery watt-hours that never match the label, inverter surge capacity that collapses under a starting motor, solar recovery speed too slow for a single cloudy afternoon, a charge controller that throttles current right when you need it most, and wiring losses the spec sheet never mentions. Each one looks minor alone. Together they make the backup promise worthless. Now look at what you actually bought. The box says Solar Backup Emergency Kit, 1800 watts, 400 watt panel, and those numbers feel like a complete sentence. They are not. Not one of those figures answers the only question that matters when your fridge compressor kicks on at midnight. What load? Running for how long? Recharged in what window? Here is the problem. A kit is not a system. It is a collection of parts sourced for margin, not matched for a real appliance. Break it down. Panel, battery, inverter, charge controller cables. Each one carries its own spec. The weakest one sets the actual ceiling for everything else. And that part is almost never the one advertised loudest. It gets worse when you watch buyers do the math. They see 400 panel watts and an 1800 watt inverter, and they add the impressiveness together. But watts on a panel measure instantaneous input under ideal sun. Watt-hours on a battery measure stored energy. Surge watts on an inverter measure a 2-second spike tolerance. Charge amps on a controller measure how fast depleted storage recovers. These are 4 separate constraints, and a deficit in any one of them breaks the chain. No reputable kit leaves this ambiguous. Before you spend $1, the listing must publish a usable battery watt-hour figure, not gross capacity. It must show an inverter surge rating separate from continuous watts. It must state the solar input limit the controller will actually accept, and it must give an estimated recharge time under realistic sun hours. If any one of those is missing, the seller already knows the answer is embarrassing. So the kit has 4 parts that do not match. Now run those parts against a real appliance and watch the numbers collapse. A modern refrigerator draws roughly 100 to 400 watts, while the compressor runs, depending on age, size, ambient temperature, and how often the door opens. That is running draw. Startup surge is 2 to 3 times higher, spiking for a fraction of a second every time the compressor cycles. A fridge does not run continuously either. It cycles on and off, but over 24 hours a typical unit consumes anywhere from 1 to 2 kilowatt-hours of actual energy. Cut that to an overnight window, and you are looking at roughly 500 to 800 watt-hours minimum, just to hold temperature from midnight to morning. Here is where the label math breaks. A 12-volt, 100 amp-hour lead-acid battery advertises 1,200 watt-hours, but discharge a lead-acid below 50% regularly, and you accelerate capacity degradation fast. Usable energy is closer to 600 watt-hours. Then subtract inverter conversion losses, typically 10 to 15%. You are now at roughly 510 watt-hours before the battery dies early. Leaf APO4 chemistry improves that ratio considerably, but it is not unlimited. Most allow 80% depth of discharge, and the battery management system will hard cut power if discharge current exceeds its rated limit. If your inverter pulls more amps than the BMS allows, the load does not slow down. It stops. The calculation every buyer must run before purchasing is straightforward. Estimate fridge watt-hours overnight. Add 15% for inverter losses. Compare that total against usable battery watt-hours, not the label number. If usable capacity does not clear that figure with margin, the fridge dies before sunrise. Now you know the battery math barely clears the minimum. But that calculation assumes the inverter actually delivers power when the fridge demands it. Here is where the watt number on the box becomes a trap. Most budget inverters advertise peak watts in large print. Continuous watts appear in smaller text, sometimes half the peak figure. A box reading 1800 watts may deliver only 1000 watts continuously. That distinction matters, but it is not even the real problem. The real problem is surge duration. When a refrigerator compressor starts, it pulls 2 to 3 times its running current for a brief window, typically 200 to 500 milliseconds. That spike has to clear before the compressor can settle into normal operation. A quality inverter handles this with a surge rating and a specified hold time. Cheap inverters list a surge figure but specify no duration. Some cannot sustain even their own peak rating beyond a single cycle before thermal protection trips. The compressor never finishes starting. The inverter cuts out. The fridge shuts down before it ever runs. It gets worse. Even if the inverter could technically handle the surge, the battery and BMS still have to supply the current simultaneously. A 1,500-watt surge at 12 volts demands 125 amps instantaneously. If the BMS current limit sits at 100 amps, it hard disconnects. Not a slowdown, a hard stop. Most buyers see 1800 watts and assume that number covers everything. It does not. Before buying any kit, confirm 4 separate figures. Continuous watt rating, surge watt rating, surge hold duration in milliseconds, and the BMS maximum discharge current. If the seller cannot provide all 4, that silence is the answer. So the inverter and BMS survived the night. The fridge stayed cold. Now the sun comes up, and you expect the panel to refill what was spent. Here is where the second failure happens. That 400-watt panel rating comes from standard test conditions. 1000 watts of irradiance per square meter, a cell temperature of exactly 25 degrees Celsius, and perfect perpendicular alignment to the sun. Those conditions exist in a laboratory. 4% for every degree above 25. That alone cuts 400 watts down to around 340. Add real-world angle, partial shade from a roofline or tree, and atmospheric haze, and you are realistically harvesting 250 to 280 watts at peak. Then compress that into actual sun hours. Most regions get 4 to 5 peak sun hours daily, not 8 hours of full rated output. A 400-watt panel in 5 peak sun hours delivers roughly 1,000 to 1,400 watt-hours after realistic derating. If the fridge consumes 600 watt-hours overnight and is still running through the next day at another 400 or more, the panel is not recovering the deficit. It is barely keeping pace. The buyer rule is simple. Calculate your actual daily load in watt-hours, then calculate realistic daily solar harvest using derated panel output multiplied by honest peak sun hours for your location. If harvest does not exceed load by a meaningful margin, the battery drains a little more each cycle until the system collapses entirely. So the panel is already delivering less than its rating. Now watch what happens before that power even reaches the battery. The charge controller sits between panel and battery, and its limits are absolute. Whatever the panel produces, the controller decides how much actually gets stored. Most budget kits ship with PWM controllers. A PWM controller connects the panel directly to the battery in pulses, which forces the panel to operate at battery voltage rather than its own optimal voltage. A 400-watt panel with a peak power voltage of around 40 volts gets dragged down to match a 12 or 24-volt battery. That mismatch destroys a significant portion of available power before conversion even begins. MPPT controllers solve this by tracking the panel's actual maximum power point and stepping the voltage down efficiently, typically recovering 20 to 30% more energy than PWM under real conditions. But here is the problem. Many kits that include an MPPT controller still cap the solar input at a lower wattage than the panel they bundle with it. A controller rated for 200 watts of solar input cannot process more than 200 watts regardless of what the panel is physically capable of producing. It gets worse with portable power stations. The solar input port on many budget units limits amperage to 10 or 12 amps. Pair that with a 400-watt panel at 20 volts, and the math caps you at 200 to 240 watts, entering the battery. The extra panel capacity is simply rejected. Before buying any kit, confirm 5 numbers. Maximum solar input watts, input voltage range, maximum input current, controller type, and whether the included panel wiring can actually reach the controller's rated input without exceeding its voltage ceiling. If the seller cannot provide all 5, the kit is not worth trusting. So you have already lost power before it reaches the battery. Now watch what happens after it leaves. At 12 volts, current runs high. A 1000-watt inverter at full load pulls roughly 83 amps. Push 83 amps through undersized cable, and resistance does not just waste energy, it drops voltage. The inverter does not measure battery state of charge, it measures terminal voltage. Drop enough voltage across a thin cable, and the inverter reads a weak battery and shuts down, even if the battery itself still holds a usable charge. That is a nuisance shutdown caused entirely by wire, not by a depleted system. Cable gauge matters in a specific direction. The longer the run and the higher the current, the heavier the cable needs to be. Budget kits routinely ship with 10 or 12 gauge wire on inverters rated for loads that demand 6 or 4 gauge. A 2-foot run might survive it. A 6-foot run turns that mismatch into measurable voltage drop and heat at the connection points. Here is where it compounds. Every adapter, every extra connector, every ring terminal that was crimped loosely adds resistance. Sellers bundle MC4 to cigarette adapters, barrel to XT60 chains, and fuse holders with undersized ratings because they are cheap to include and invisible to a spec sheet. Each junction is a potential failure point and a guaranteed performance loss. The buyer inspection is straightforward. Confirm cable gauge against the inverter's actual current draw, not its marketing label. Measure cable length. Check fuse rating against wire gauge, not just load wattage. Verify each connector's current rating. Count every adapter in the chain. If any one of those numbers is missing from the product listing, the seller does not know their own system well enough for you to trust it under real load. Count every broken link so far. Fake watt hours in the battery. Losses at the charge controller. Voltage drop across undersized cable. Now price the fix. A fridge running overnight needs roughly 600 real watt hours available after depth of discharge limits. A lithium battery that honestly delivers that costs around $200 on its own. Add a true MPPT controller rated for your actual panel current, not a PWM unit with an MPPT label, and you are adding $60 to $90. The inverter needs verified surge capacity to start a compressor, which means a tested 1,500 watt unit minimum, not a 1,000 watt unit with a 2,000 watt sticker. That is another $80. Properly gauged copper cable, rated fuse holders, and a basic inline meter to confirm real performance add 40 more. Then panels sized for your actual daily harvest, accounting for tilt, shade, and realistic irradiance hours, not the peak figure on the box. Price all of it together and you are well past $500 before installation or any transfer switching that safely isolates your backup load from the grid. That is not an argument that cheap kits are fraud. The narrower verdict is this. Disconnected specs were bundled and sold as if their combination equaled blackout capability. It does not. Each component was rated independently under ideal conditions that do not overlap in the real system. The buyer inspection is one rule. Price the complete engineered chain, then compare that number to the kit price. If the gap requires parts that are essential to the job, the advertised price was never the backup price. It was the price of the box. So here is the rule that replaces every spec sheet comparison you will ever do. Backup equals load list plus runtime plus recharge plan. If any one of those three is missing from a kit's documentation, that kit has not proven it can protect your fridge. Not a caution, a disqualification. The concrete test is this. The fridge must start, run overnight, and the battery must recover the next day under realistic sun. All three in sequence, with your actual panel, your actual cable, your actual inverter. Not peak ratings. Real conditions. Before you buy anything, pull the label off your fridge, find the running watts and the startup surge. Then open the kit specs and check whether the battery's usable watt hours cover a full night, and whether the panel wattage can replace what was drawn before the next outage. If the numbers do not close, the dead fridge outcome is already written. Drop your fridge watts and your kit watt hours in the comments. Others are running the same comparison, and the gaps people are finding are worth seeing. If this investigation saved you from buying the box instead of the backup, subscribe, because the next video runs the same test on portable power stations marketed for the same job.